And welcome back. We are now joined by Dr. Scott Gerber. He's here to talk about the Supreme Court. And, of course, we had a lot of decisions come down last week very quickly. Within a two-day span, several major issues were decided. And affirmative action was the very first one discussed.
Yeah, it was a very momentous term. And in major cases, they tend to hold them until the end like they did this year. And the biggest case, especially given what I do for a living, i.e. teach at a university, is the decision involving the affirmative action student admissions programs at the University of North Carolina, which is a public institution, and Harvard University, which is a private institution. And the U.S. Supreme Court, by a 6-3 vote, struck down both universities' programs, and has now concluded that race cannot be taken into account as a factor in admissions decisions. And the only way that race is permissible is if, for example, in an applicant's personal statement, they specifically say how race has impacted their life as a person. So the court has now moved to the colorblind version of the law rather than a group-based version of the law.
So what are the long-term ramifications from this decision that you can see?
Well, it depends. If universities still want to have diverse student bodies in terms of race and ethnicity and gender, they're going to have to come up with different ways to do that. And I think the most obvious way to try to do that with regard to race and ethnicity would be socioeconomic considerations. And so the data shows that proportionally more minorities grow up in poorer families than say Caucasians do. And so they could capture more minority students that way.
We also saw a couple of other major issues decided last week by the Supreme Court.
Yeah, one of them was the court ruled for a web designer who did not want to design websites and wedding sites for same-sex couples because she said it interfered with her religious beliefs. And in Colorado, they have, as they do in most places, they have anti-discrimination laws. And so those two principles were at stake, and the Supreme Court ruled for the web designer based on free speech grounds and religious grounds. Another one, a week or two earlier, involved the independent state legislature theory. And the court actually rejected the conservative approach to that. And that argument was that that state courts couldn't review decisions by state legislatures as to which presidential elections to put forward. And the U.S. Supreme Court actually disagreed with that conservative strategy and said that courts do have a role in monitoring their own state's election laws. So that was another one. There was also a voting rights case out of Alabama that also went in a more liberal direction. And the court, in fact, did hold that a voting district in Alabama was illegally constructed. And that surprised people. So that was another one. And there's just 3 or 4 other major cases and the like, but those are the ones that pop into my head right now.
All right, Dr. Scott Gerber, thank you so much for your time. Always a great pleasure to discuss politics and other things that are going down the pike with you. And we'll be back with more right after this.